Well, if you're going to fight for a change, let me give you some things that are great tips. Karen Vanauer is a therapist that we're working with, and she is doing ministry with our First Baptist Church. She shared some of the similar fighting practices, how to fight fair in a relationship. I'm going to give you a couple of those things that you might want to implement as well. First of all, you need to ignore the reference library. Most of us have a reference library. There's something that you're going to go back to when things don't go your way. And what you're going back to is the way things were that you remember about that person hurting you before. And so you kind of throw in the kitchen sink. You know, a reference library, you go back and say, I think I remember a time when. You know, in our marriage, I know my wife has a great memory. So she is capable of saying, 3 years ago, 2 months, there was that day where we had a lot of rain, 30-mile-an-hour wind. You remember that day? Yeah, that's the day that you didn't. And then she'll follow it up. It's striking how she can remember those moments. Of course, men, we may not be able to remember as well, but there's something that we do as well in the reference to library. We'll go back to one thing over and over. Often men will do this. You always bring that up. See, that's the same reference library. I only have one little note card in the reference library in that little drawer, but it's the same one. And I go back to it all the time when I say, you always say that. See, if you're going to deal with a conflict in the moment, you got to deal with the issue. You can't bring back all of the past. Most of us, because of our emotional insecurities, now that's crucial to this conversation. Our emotional insecurities would dictate we have no idea how to just let the moment be about that simple set of circumstances. We attach ourselves, our whole self, into the conflict, and we essentially say, because you didn't take out the garbage, you don't love me, and if you don't love me, then this marriage isn't going to work. How is it possible that the time you don't take out the garbage is the sum of the marriage? It sums up everything. Fighting fair is really difficult, because when you're emotional, you're going to want to go after that person, and you don't mind if you bend the rules a little bit to punch below the belt or to catch somebody when they're not looking. A couple of illustrations about how we need to fight fair. Don't use 4-letter words. Don't cuss at each other. I'm going to be honest with you, if you want to put this into practice, just decide that when you want to start getting upset with somebody and start talking to them, you bleep out the swear words. And if your conversation goes like this, you bleep a bleep when you bleep a bleep, but I can't bleep a bleep. What you've realized in that moment is you've said nothing. You've had no conversation that has any productivity to it at all. You have nothing to offer with the conversation. What you're essentially saying is that I have reduced this fight to just being angry and being vulgar. Now, the same can be true not just about swear words, but name calling. Take that out of it. You can't call people names. Or words that are of disrespect. I love the story when my son was about 4 years old that he called me. My wife made him call me, and when he called, he said in tears, he goes, Dad, Mom says I can't watch my shows. I said, what shows? And he goes, my 3 favorite shows. And I go, what are your 3 favorite shows? And he goes, the cooking show, Fear Factor, and Return of the Jedi. I said, wait, why can't you watch the shows? I've been grounded. Why are you grounded? I'm trying to get him to finally admit, right? So he's passing blame on to his mom, and he finally says, because I called her stupid and I told her to shut up. He didn't get very far with me. But a little hint in marriage, it certainly works for us, and I believe it's biblical. And children don't come first. I've often told my kids, I loved your mom long before I knew you guys. So don't try to put a wedge between us as if you're going to get the upper hand against your mom. Well, the same is true then. I was pretty upset with Joey that's the kind of language he used. Of course, Tara managed things a lot better than I probably would have. He was grounded. He knew it. He knew it was wrong, even at 4. How much more are we as adults if we're incapable of having a conversation without name calling or using words of disrespect where we put people down? So eliminate those. Of course, then also, no choirs allowed. This one I add in, I often tell couples, I go, you have too many voices that are, the preaching to the choir. They're encouraging what you're talking about. When a wife goes to her girlfriends and they say, you need to leave it. When a guy goes to his buddies and they're like, she's not right for you. You need to move on. those people you're talking to, they have their own set of issues. So of course they're going to speak into your relationship what is easiest for them and what makes you feel better so that they can feel like they're more of a friend to you. But the truth is they're not more of a friend. What they ought to be telling you is, I'm gonna hold you accountable. If you're struggling in that relationship, and this is one of the next pieces of fighting fair and a rule to live by, you need to look more into the mirror and not through the window. There are so many times that marriage is in conflict, any relationship in conflict, the person will feel like they are a victim of circumstances, and you are not. And I hope you can admit that even as I'm speaking right now, that you'd be able to say, I am not a victim of circumstances. This person is not my parent, and I'm a third or fourth child. This person is my equal counterpart to this relationship, and I have a lot of say to this relationship. What I need to do is change my behavior so that this person will understand that I'm serious with what I'm talking about, with what needs to change, that I honor certain non-negotiables in our marriage, and then that I'm going to be more adaptable to things that I let get to me, even though they're very frivolous and simple, and they really shouldn't be that big of a deal. You need to decide what those are and hold yourself accountable to your part of the relationship. Again, I'm going to talk about that next week. The emphasis being that it is not as if it's 50-50. What a terrible illustration of marriage. It is you giving 100%. See, the 50-50 assumes you have to do half the work, they have to do half the work, and the marriage will work. But if you've been married long enough, you know that somebody is going to fail and let you down. You know, if a bridge meets in the middle, 50-50, if you've got a rope bridge and it's short 1 foot, it's still not going to work. You can't meet in the middle and let somebody be short and still think you can cross that bridge. In order to really make that bond united, you've got to be willing to go the nth degree, to the fullest extent of what would be your role as a husband or a wife. You do it regardless, is my point. You know what it means to be a good husband, to be a faithful husband, to be a husband who honors God. If that's what you know, that's what you do. It's not contingent on what the other person is doing against you in that moment. Even as that person may have behavior that is detrimental to your marriage, you can still respond to that in a right, humble, honest, determined way, a God-honoring way. You see, that's what brings you back to the table in a marriage. It's not the absence of conflict. It's the ability to, in the midst of that conflict, fight for a change. Fight for your future. At the end of the story of Adam and Eve and their consequences and their sin, Genesis 3:20, and Adam named the woman Eve. She would be the mother of all living people. That is the point where Adam says, no matter what we messed up, no matter the consequences of us being taken out of the garden, no matter the work that has now put a burden upon us as we try to raise a family and provide for a family, I am for you and you are for me. And together we're going to make this work. From that moment, we have the birth of their children, who are then the birthing of the next generation, who become the parents of all of humanity. They leave a great legacy because of their ability to, in spite of their sin and their shortcomings, to work it out. Ultimately, you make it work because of a triangle relationship, that you have God above all things, and as you grow closer to Him, you'll grow closer to your spouse. And when conflict comes up, that you might be honest enough with yourself to say, I don't need to look through a window and pass blame. I need to start with a mirror of faith, and a prayer of God's wisdom in my life. And if there are things that I'm not doing well with this relationship, I'm going to change those things first. And I'm going to be a person of influence into this partner who has equal access into this marriage, who I cannot make subservient to my will. I can't force him or her to change. But I can influence. And if I am open to the will of God, it is amazing how even with the consequences of sin, God still provides hope. He certainly did that with Adam and Eve. He'll do that with you.